Greetings and salutations. This is a review of Battlefront's Flames of War Russian source book for mid-war 42-43 called Enemy at the Gates. So, on the back, it gives a little anecdotal story, and then it tells you what lists that you have in here, including building a mixed tank company, a T-34 tank company. I know the Russians use the word battalion instead. M3 Lead Tank Company, Rifle Company, the Hero Rifle Company. But what's also cool is that they have the city fighting rules in here as well. So when you open this up, you get to see a nice overall view of the map, January 1942, how things were going. And then table of contents. It's a nice touch. They always add some genuine wartime photos there to put things in perspective. You also have what happened from 1939 to 1941. So this is a really great help for those people who know very little about World War II history. This is a pretty fast refresher, or a fast primer, if you will. You're basically front-loaded for this. Now you also have the Soviet special rules here. So there are definitely some changes compared to version 3. They've brought out snipers as well here, and then of course some nice eye candy here for upcoming Soviet stuff. Now down on the bottom here, as you go through, you have a timeline of the major events that happened in World War II, not just for the Eastern Front. You also have it for the Western Front, you have it for the North African Theater, you also have it for the Pacific Theater. And it's color-coded, so that as you're looking through the months, and it'll give you the date, and then it'll tell you, very quick thing, what happened there. This is really nice, so it keeps people's perspective that a lot of things were happening across the planet in terms of this war, and that's why we call it World War II. So here we have what the Eastern Front looks like in November of 1942. As you can see, the Germans did take quite a bit of Russia. They had Italians and Romanians and Hungarians helping them out. On the next page here, we look at the city of Stalingrad, because that's really the end main focus of this. So this book, you can look at it from, January 42, working its way through the beginning of 43, with the Stalingrad as the centerpiece here. You've got a nice detailed map here of Stalingrad. And again, it shows you where the Russians were doing their crossings to reinforce the city. I would like to point out that the Enemy at the Gates is also the name of a movie centering around Stalingrad. In fact, Stalingrad has got several movies out. You might want to check that out. They may not necessarily be historically accurate, but it gives you an idea of the desperation of the fights that both sides were going through. Now, you also have these numbers here that tell you the main places of where the city fighting was going. So familiar places, if you know Stalingrad, like the Tractor Factory, the Red October Factory, Mamayev Kurgan, and all those. So it also gives you a little more detail about Stalingrad fighting, and then Operation Mars, because there were other things happening around other than just Stalingrad. You had Russian attacks here to the north of Stalingrad, and then you have Operation Uranus, which, again, Operation Uranus, the 62nd Army was holding in Stalingrad, and they were not getting all the men, all the supplies that they needed, just enough to keep the army there. What the Russians were doing, they were taking men, equipment, supplies, and getting ready for the other armies on either side of Stalingrad to launch Operation Uranus to go and cut off the German 6th Army in Stalingrad. So the Russians were trying to do a reverse tactic of what the Germans did. Know your tanks. Well, here again, what are the basic Russian tanks that you're going to have? You're going to have your KV-1, your KV-1S. The difference between the two, the KV-1 has heavier armor. It is overworked. It's not that reliable of a tank. It's more prone to breakdown in real life, but it had the armor of a Tiger 1. Too bad that the gun was just the regular 76mm gun that you find on your T-34. The KV-1S was an improvement over the KV-1 in the sense of it was lighter, it was a little bit faster and more reliable. But the T-34 was the mainstay, pretty much, for this time period. You have the T-60, light tank, then you have the M3 Lee, the M3 Stuart, and the Valentine. All these are Lend-Lease tanks from America and Britain at the time. While the Russians did not think too highly of the Lend-Lease tanks, they used them anyways because there was a lag time, a time of delay, if you will, for the Russians to build more tanks to fill the losses, to make up for the losses they had suffered in 41 and early 42. They were grateful to have them. So here we have, we start looking at units here. So this is a mixed, this would be looking at for an example of the 23rd Tank Corps, and you've got the different brigades there. Here we can look at tank formations like the Mixed Tank Battalion, the T-34 Early Battalion, the M3 Lead Tank Battalion. We have the Rifle Battalion and the Hero Rifle Battalion. And then these are your support units that you can take, including flamethrowing tanks, rocket launchers, artillery, reconnaissance elements in the form of armored cars, and of course Sturmovix. So then you start focusing on the individual brigades here. So this is your Mixed Tank Battalion where you have KV-1s mixed with T-34s that you can mix it with, you know, some Lend-Lease depending on what you had. And then, of course, you end up having your unit cards here. Well, it's the unit information that you have. So it just tells you what you have here on that. 13th Tank Brigade. Okay. You have, again, in this case, this is your T-34s that form your corps. Well, this is the early T-34. So it's not the later, more improved, where you have like a roomier turret T-34. So with that, you got your information there. You have your cards. You have your Valentine tank, your T-60 tank. You have your 145th Tank Brigade, which was consisting of M3 Lees and Stuarts. So you can have an M3 Lee tank company, a Stuart company, which in Russian organization, it's like our platoon. Okay, it's a little bit different how they did things there. M3 Lee Tank Battalion HQ. Again, the battalion, it's a company, you know, by Western standards. But that's how the Russians chose to call that. Then we have the 284th Tomsk Rifle Division. Okay, this is your regular rifle battalion that you have, and you have hordes of infantry. So you can have rifle companies. You can have a penal company too. Penal companies, those were the men who were accused of cowardice on the field of battle, or they did traitorous acts, and they were sent into the penal battalion. They always had to attack. They never took cover. They don't benefit from bulletproof cover in this game. They were truly the Expendables. Before there was ever a movie called The Expendables, you could argue that the penal company, they were the Strafbattalion, or the Strafniki. Okay. You also have some choices. You could also have SMG companies, anti-tank rifle companies, scout platoon, 82mm mortar, 120mm mortar. I mean, you can beef up your rifle battalion and literally bring on the pain to any opponent. So you have your information here, the Rifle HQ, and then the Rifle Company. One of the nice things here with the Commissar rule, even though I did enjoy the previous versions with the Commissar, that if your unit failed to rally from being pinned, with the Commissar you eliminated a stand and you got to re-roll. If you rolled a 1, then they went and eliminated the Commissar, which kind of made sense on that. But it adds certain flavor to it. But this, I think this is a good change here, where for your Rifle Company, you have a motivation, a confident motivation. But when you have the Commissar in there, that actually improves on that. So instead of the confident 4+, with the Commissar, it's a 3+. However, if you lose your Commissar, then it goes back to 4+, because now you don't have the guy, yelling at you. Here you have the Penal Company, and with these guys, they're already fearless to start with, because again, these guys have nothing to lose, and with the Commissar, they were now +2. They were a 2+ in terms of motivation. Very hard to stop. You basically had to kill them. That was pretty much it. SMG Company, the Maxim MG Company, anti-tank rifle, 45mm AT gun, 82mm mortar, 120mm mortar, as you can see. And then here we have the 9th Motor Rifle Brigade. And in this case here we have the Hero Rifle Battalion. Now, what's the deal about the Hero Rifle Battalion? This was a unit that survived previous combats, so the men gained experience. So you have men who it's not quite the same. They are a little bit better in some respects, but they are also a little more reluctant, and they need encouragement from the Commissar to make things happen. Storm groups, I would think this would be great, especially for city fighting. Hero SMG Company, the Scout Platoon, Sniper Platoon, okay, support units, okay. Katyushas, oh yes, especially if you have a lot of them. It just makes it really nasty. Very nasty against infantry. Hordes and hordes of rockets just coming down. Yeah, the 76mm artillery battalion, the 122mm artillery battalion. They did away with the Red God of War, which was kind of a bummer, but I understand why they were doing this. So now the artillery units, they're like individual batteries instead of combining. This is now a question of, well, that's a decision that they made. Okay. Light anti-tank killer, light tank killer company against 45mm gun. Here you have a choice of 45, 57, or 60. Or 76mm guns. Then you have your AA machine gun mounted on a truck. Okay, you have your Sturmovik. So that's all your support. Now, here's where things get interesting. If you weren't interested before, you might want to look at this. This is city fighting, because that's really what Stalingrad was considered, the city fighting. So with that, you can take a look here, and you can see that they have rules specifically for city fighting. Of course, they've got the eye candy buildings that are there. Again, great pictures, and it shows you what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. They talk about the different rules in there, how to handle things. I've not had a chance to read those yet. You do get urban assault missions. Now, your typical Flames of War game is on a 6-foot by 4-foot table. These tables here are 3 feet by 2 feet. So this is a little bit different compared to what we are used to in the past. So a few buildings, and you can have yourself a good old-fashioned street fight there. So you got the house, You got the square. In the German book, the German source book, Iron Cross, which I did in another video, they also have the same urban assault rules, the same city fighting rules, but the scenarios are different. It's still the same size table, 3x2, but it's a little bit different. So it's not like you bought 2 books and you got 2 of the exact same scenarios. No, you've got four different scenarios coming in. You know, painting Soviets, I think it tends to be less complicated than the Germans because they just painted it one color, pretty much. Again, I can't emphasize the dry brushing of a lighter color on there to bring out the edges, use the black lining or the black wash to fill in the recesses and the cracks to make the tanks pop out, to make it look really good. Okay, now keep in mind, if you don't have the Forces of War paint sets or color of war, whatever Battlefront calls it, if you happen to have Vallejo or Tamiya or some other paint set, you know, you can get pretty close in terms of matching it. Remember that the green paint that they used to paint the Russian tanks, there were different shades of it. It does not take into account how much the sun has bleached the colors. The ultraviolet radiation from the sun actually affects the coloring. It's also true for uniforms. It's like not all Russian uniforms were the exact same color. It wasn't. Some of them were a little bit lighter, some were a little bit darker. Okay, again, so think about that. How to paint Russian troops, how to paint your Sturmovik. Okay. And then, of course, it tells you how to work with commissars and piping. Okay, your basic Soviet uniform. Hoorah! Basing guide. How do you do your bases? Now, a change here certainly is looking at your 50 centimeter mortar, your ATRs. Now they put them on a large base. But what if you have the medium-sized base? And how do you resolve that? You know what? Put the bases together. I honestly don't see the need to go and rebase it. Now, if you're new at this, then you go ahead and base it just like they have. I'm talking to the guys and gals out there who happen to have this. You can just simply put 2 or 3 medium bases together, and that takes care of the problem. Okay, and then as we're getting toward the end here, we have a deal of Nikolai's steel wall, where you get some T-34s, you get some KVs, and you get 4 76mm guns. So it's not a bad force to start out with if you're looking at it that way, but do keep in mind that Stalingrad is a lot of infantry fighting. That's the thing about Stalingrad. But my gosh, the tanks were there at the beginning, but as the city became more and more destroyed, the tanks couldn't go in because they couldn't move around, they couldn't maneuver, and more often than not, they would get stuck. And if they got stuck, then they were a target. Something to think about as we hear. And here we go with Europe again, 1942, as we finish off this review. So, all in all, I'm excited. I'm going to have to give this a good read and play some Battles of Stalingrad. Okay, hope this benefited you. God bless you and have a good day.